What happens when an Academy Award winning actress sits down at the table and the conversation takes a turn no one in the studio expected? Make sure to subscribe to the Star Talks and like and comment for more talk show coverage. The cameras are already rolling. The audience is clapping as the hosts welcome the next guest. You can feel that standard daytime TV excitement in the room. Upbeat music, polite smiles, a few cheers when her name is announced. Please welcome Academy Award winner, producer, director, the incredible Halle Berry. Halle Berry walks out in a tailored blazer, smiling, waving, hugging the hosts one by one before taking her seat at the table. The energy feels warm, comfortable, familiar. Across from her sits Sunny Hostin, poised as always, papers neatly stacked in front of her. The rest of the panel smiles, adjusting their mugs. "Thank you for being here," one of the co-hosts says. "We love having you." Halle laughs softly. "I love being here. This table is never boring." Audience chuckles. Sunny smiles politely. That's definitely true. The conversation starts light. They talk about Halle's new project, a film she's producing and starring in. She explains why she chose this role, how important representation is to her, how she's trying to create opportunities behind the camera. "I've spent years in this industry," Halle says, leaning forward slightly. "And I've learned that if you want something done right, sometimes you have to build the table yourself." Applause. Sunny nods. "You've spoken a lot about fighting for respect in Hollywood." Halle shrugs. "Yeah, it's no secret. When I won my Oscar, I thought it would change everything. And in some ways it did. But in a lot of ways, it didn't." The room grows a little quieter. The audience senses a shift from light promo talk to something more personal. Sunny jumps in. "You've also been very open about the struggles you've had, relationships, career setbacks, public scrutiny." Halle nods carefully. "Yes. And some critics," Sunny continues, flipping a page, "have said that while you've broken barriers, you haven't always used your platform to speak out strongly enough on certain social justice issues." There's a subtle murmur in the audience. It's the kind of murmur that only happens when a question lands harder than expected. Halle blinks once, her expression tightening. Not dramatically, just slightly. "I'm sorry, can you repeat that?" Sunny keeps her tone measured. "There's been commentary that you choose your moments carefully, that you're selective about which causes you publicly attach your name to." One of the other hosts shifts in her seat. "Sunny." "No, it's a fair question," Sunny says calmly. "We're talking about responsibility and influence." Halle folds her hands on the table. "Responsibility to who?" "To the community," Sunny replies. "To women of color who look to you as a trailblazer." The audience reacts again, a few sounds, some shifting in seats. Halle's smile fades, but her voice remains steady. "I've spent my entire career being a black woman in Hollywood. That alone has been political." Applause breaks out immediately. Sunny nods but doesn't back down. "Of course. But visibility isn't the same as advocacy." Now the tension is tangible. The other hosts glance between them. One of them attempts a light laugh. "We're diving deep today." Halle turns slightly toward Sunny. "Let me ask you something, Sunny. Do you think advocacy only counts if it's loud?" Sunny doesn't hesitate. "I think silence can also be loud." A few audience members clap. Others stay quiet. Halle exhales. "See, that's where I disagree. There's no yelling. No raised voices. Just that tight, controlled energy that happens when two strong personalities refuse to soften their positions." "I've funded scholarships quietly," Halle continues. "I've mentored young filmmakers privately. I've supported women in ways that never made headlines. Because not everything is for applause." Sunny replies, "But public figures shape public narratives. When you stay quiet during certain national conversations, people notice." Halle leans back slightly. "And when I do speak, I get criticized for not saying it the right way." The audience reacts again, louder this time. You can hear someone shout, "That's right." Sunny keeps her tone calm but firm. "It's not about perfection. It's about presence." Another host interjects gently. Okay, let's unpack this because I think this is important." Halle nods slowly. "I agree. Let's unpack it." She looks directly at Sunny now. "You're asking me why I'm not louder." "I'm asking if you think there's a responsibility to be," Sunny clarifies. Halle pauses for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "I think there's a responsibility to be authentic." The audience claps again. Sunny tilts her head slightly. Authenticity can sometimes look like avoidance. The temperature at the table rises another degree. Halle's eyebrows lift just a little. Avoidance. Yes, Sunny says. There have been moments, major cultural flashpoints, where other actresses spoke out strongly. And you didn't. Halle responds immediately this time. And that doesn't mean I wasn't doing anything. Sunny replies, but the public didn't see it. And why is that the standard? Halle asks. Silence. The kind of silence that only live television produces. Heavy, unscripted, real. The audience is fully locked in now. One of the co-hosts clears her throat. I think what Sunny is getting at. No, Halle interrupts gently but firmly. Let her finish. Sunny looks at Halle directly. Do you believe being the first black woman to win Best Actress comes with an obligation to publicly lead? There it is. The question lands harder than anything so far. The audience gasps audibly. Halle doesn't answer immediately. She sits still, eyes focused, jaw slightly tight. After a few seconds, she speaks. I believe it comes with the obligation to survive. A wave of applause erupts. Sunny doesn't clap. She watches Halle closely. Survival isn't leadership, Sunny says quietly. And just like that, the atmosphere shifts from thoughtful debate to something sharper. Halle's voice lowers. You don't think surviving in an industry that didn't want me there was leadership? Sunny responds, I think breaking barriers is powerful, but maintaining pressure on the system is equally important. The other hosts exchange looks. One of them leans toward the camera slightly, almost as if sensing the clip that will be replayed everywhere later. Halle nods once. Slowly. So what you're saying, she says carefully, is that I haven't done enough. Sunny holds her gaze. I'm saying some people feel that way. The audience noise swells, some clapping, some disapproving murmurs. Halle's composure remains intact, but her eyes sharpen. Well, she says, her voice calm but edged with steel. Maybe those people don't know the whole story. And the tension hangs there. Unresolved. Uncomfortable. Completely real. The camera cuts to a wide shot of the table as one of the hosts jumps in to move toward commercial break. We're going to take a quick break, she says with a tight smile. When we come back, more with Halle Berry. The audience applauds, but it's different now, louder, charged. As the music plays and the cameras fade, Halle and Sunny exchange one more look across the table. Not angry. Not friendly. Just firm. And everyone in that studio knows the conversation is far from over. The audience is still buzzing when the show comes back from commercial. You can feel that shift. The polite daytime tone is still there, but it's tighter now. Focused. One of the hosts smiles into the camera. We're back with Academy Award winner Halle Berry. The applause comes again, strong but layered with anticipation. Halle adjusts slightly in her chair, posture straight, hands resting calmly on the table. Sunny sits across from her, equally composed, her expression professional but serious. The host to Halle's left tries to lighten the mood. Before the break, we were having a really important conversation about visibility, responsibility, and what it means to be a trailblazer. And I think this is why we love this table. We can have these discussions. Halle nods. I agree. Sunny adds. And I want to be clear, this isn't personal. It's about the larger picture. Halle turns toward her. It always feels personal when it's your life. There's a soft ripple in the audience. Sunny doesn't look away. I respect that. But when you become a symbol, and you are a symbol, people project expectations. Halle inhales slowly. And that's exactly the problem. The table goes quiet again. You said something before the break, Halle continues, about maintaining pressure on the system. Do you know how much pressure I've lived under for the last 20 years? Sunny responds calmly. I'm not questioning your struggle. It sounds like you are, Halle says, not raising her voice but not smiling either. One of the co-hosts quickly interjects. Okay, let's unpack this specific point. Sunny, when you say pressure, what does that look like to you? Sunny folds her hands together. Using your voice publicly during key moments. Lending your influence when policies affect women of color. Showing up at rallies. Being vocal when it might cost you something. Halle lets out a small, almost incredulous laugh. It always costs us something. The audience claps at that. It always costs us something, she repeats. When I speak, I risk being labeled difficult. Angry. Political. When I stay quiet, I'm called absent. So tell me, what's the correct way to exist? Sunny pauses for a beat. I don't think there's a correct way. But silence during injustice can feel like complicity. The word hangs in the air. Complicity. You can almost hear the collective intake of breath from the audience. Halle's expression changes. Not explosive, but deeply focused. Complicit? She asks carefully. I'm saying that's how it can be perceived, Sunny clarifies. But you chose that word, Halle replies. The tension sharpens again. Another host jumps in quickly. Let's not escalate the wording here. I think what Sunny is trying to say is, no, Halle says, raising her hand slightly but respectfully. Words matter. Sunny nods. They do. Then let's be precise, Halle says. Complicity suggests I've benefited from injustice and chosen to protect that benefit. Sunny doesn't interrupt. Halle continues, her voice steady. I've had to fight for every contract, every role, every paycheck. I wasn't handed power, I clawed my way to it. Applause builds, louder this time. Sunny waits for the audience to settle. And that's exactly why people look to you. Because you fought. But fighting doesn't always mean shouting, Halle responds. Sometimes it does, Sunny says back. There's a slight overlap in their voices. Not yelling, but both determined not to yield. The moderator host leans in. Halle, can I ask you directly, were there moments you chose not to speak because you feared backlash? Halle doesn't hesitate. Yes. The honesty catches everyone off guard. Yes, she repeats. There were moments I thought about my children, my career, the studio's watching, the headlines that twist words. The room softens slightly at that. Sunny nods slowly. That's understandable. But, Sunny continues carefully, isn't that the privilege of success? To be able to absorb that backlash. Halle's eyes narrow slightly. Privilege? Yes, Sunny says. You have a platform many women don't. And I use it, Halle says firmly. Not always publicly, Sunny counters. Halle leans forward now. Why is public performance the only metric? Audience claps again. Sunny answers, because visibility creates change. And private funding doesn't? Halle fires back. It does, Sunny admits. But it doesn't inspire mass momentum. There's a brief pause. One of the other hosts attempts humor. I feel like we're in a graduate seminar right now. The audience laughs lightly, breaking the tension for just a second. But Halle doesn't smile. Here's my concern, Halle says. When we start policing how Black women advocate, we end up dividing each other. The audience reacts with a strong wave of applause. Sunny responds immediately. Accountability isn't division. Halle's voice lowers slightly. It feels like judgment. Sunny meets her gaze. It's dialogue. The energy at the table is now intense but controlled. Neither woman is shouting. Neither is losing composure. That's what makes it more powerful. Halle shifts in her chair. Let me ask you something, Sunny. Do you think I owe the public constant access to my activism? Sunny considers the wording. I think when your image is tied to empowerment, people expect consistency. And who defines consistency? Halle asks. The community, Sunny replies. And which community? Halle challenges. A few audience members murmur agreement. Sunny answers carefully. Women of color. Young actresses. Advocates who feel that every major voice counts. Halle nods slowly. I mentor young actresses weekly. I invest in female-led production companies. I fund mental health resources for survivors of domestic violence. The audience gasps softly. They hadn't heard all of that before. I don't tweet it, Halle continues. Because I'm not doing it for applause. Sunny's expression shifts slightly. Less confrontational now, more thoughtful. But do you understand, Sunny says, that public solidarity can give people hope? Halle's tone softens just a fraction. Hope also comes from seeing someone survive and thrive. The table goes quiet again. The moderator host speaks gently. It sounds like this is really about different philosophies of leadership. Sunny nods. Maybe it is. Halle adds, I believe in leading by example. And I believe, Sunny says, in leading with voice. There's no sarcasm. No hostility. Just two different ideologies sitting face to face. The audience applauds both lines almost equally. But then Sunny adds one more thing. Can I ask you something honestly? Halle gestures. Of course. Do you ever regret not speaking up in certain moments? It's direct. Personal. The room freezes again. Halle doesn't answer immediately. She looks down for a brief second, then back up. Yes, she says quietly. The admission shifts the energy completely. Yes, she repeats. There are moments I wish I had been braver. The audience grows softer now, empathetic instead of reactive. But bravery looks different at different stages of life, Halle continues. When I was younger, I was trying to survive an industry that told me I was lucky to even be there. Sunny nods slowly. And now? Sunny asks. Now, Halle says, I'm building my own table. The line lands strong. Applause fills the studio again. Sunny leans back slightly. Then maybe this is the moment to be louder. It's not accusatory, but it's still pointed. Halle smiles faintly. Maybe I already am. There's something unresolved in the air. Respect, yes. But also friction. Real friction. The moderator-host glances toward the stage manager off camera. Time is running tight. We're going to continue this conversation, she says carefully. Because clearly, this is bigger than just one person. The audience claps again. As the segment edges toward another break, Halle and Sunny exchange another long look. Less sharp than before, but still charged. And everyone watching, in the studio and at home, knows this conversation is no longer just about advocacy. It's about identity, expectation, pressure, and who gets to define what leadership really looks like. The applause fades, but the air in the studio doesn't settle. You can feel that the audience knows this isn't just another promotional stop. The moderator leans forward slightly, her voice measured. We're still here with Halle Berry, and we're having a conversation that I think a lot of people at home are going to be talking about. There's a low hum of agreement from the crowd. Halle sits upright, composed, but her expression is more serious now. Sunny sits across from her, hands folded, watching closely, not combative but firm. One of the co-hosts jumps in gently. Halle, earlier you said something powerful. That survival was leadership. I want to understand that more. Halle nods slowly. When I came into this industry, there weren't many women who looked like me in leading roles. And when I say there weren't many, I mean almost none. Every audition felt like I was representing an entire community. Every misstep felt amplified. Sunny adds quietly, that's true. Halle continues. So when I chose roles, when I decided what to say publicly, I wasn't just thinking about impact. I was thinking about longevity. If I got labeled difficult too early, I wouldn't have had the career I have now. The audience listens closely. Sunny responds carefully. But some would argue that those labels exist whether you speak or not. Halle turns slightly toward her. Exactly. Which is why I chose to build power quietly first. A few audience members clap at that. Sunny nods. But now you have that power. Halle doesn't hesitate. Yes. And that's why, Sunny continues, her tone steady, people feel urgency. Because when someone with real influence chooses discretion, it can feel like a missed opportunity. Halle leans back slightly, crossing one leg over the other. I hear that. I do. But I need to push back on this idea that if I'm not trending, I'm not active. The moderator interjects softly. No one is saying you're inactive. It's implied, Halle replies calmly. There's a pause. Sunny speaks again. Let me frame it differently. During certain national crises, when policies directly affected women's rights, when racial tensions were at their peak, other actresses made statements immediately. You stayed relatively quiet. That stood out. Halle's jaw tightened slightly. And do you know what was happening in my personal life during some of those moments? Sunny pauses. No. Exactly, Halle says. The audience murmurs. I was dealing with custody battles. I was dealing with health issues in my family. I was producing a film independently that could have collapsed if I alienated certain investors. Life doesn't pause, so we can be perfectly outspoken. The room grows quiet again. Sunny softens just slightly. That's fair. But here's the tension, Sunny continues. Public figures are often asked to carry more than is fair. Halle nods once. And sometimes we break under it. That line lands heavy. One of the co-hosts looks visibly moved. Do you feel like you've been close to breaking? Halle exhales. There were years I was exhausted. Not physically. Emotionally. Feeling like no matter what I did, it wasn't enough. Sunny listens intently now, less adversarial, more reflective. But, Sunny says carefully, isn't that shared exhaustion part of what connects leaders to the community? Halle tilts her head slightly. Leaders are human. Yes, Sunny agrees. But leadership often requires discomfort. And I've been uncomfortable my entire career, Halle says firmly. The audience claps loudly. Sunny waits for the noise to fade. This isn't about denying your struggle. It's about the next chapter. Halle studies her. What do you think my next chapter should be? Sunny answers without hesitation. More visible advocacy. There's a sharp reaction from the audience, some clapping, some murmuring. Halle smiles faintly. So you want me louder? I want you intentional and public, Sunny clarifies. Halle leans forward again, this time more animated. What if I told you I've been working on legislation behind the scenes? What if I told you I've met with lawmakers privately? Would that count? Sunny's eyebrows lift slightly. That's powerful. But most people don't know that. Because I don't hold press conferences about it, Halle replies. The moderator jumps in gently. Is there a middle ground here? Public support without constant performance. Sunny considers that. Maybe. Halle shakes her head lightly. The problem is, there's never enough. If I post once, people ask why not twice. If I speak at one event, they ask why not another. Sunny responds, that's the reality of influence. And that reality is exhausting, Halle says. There's a brief silence. Then Sunny says something that shifts the tone again. Can I be honest? Some women feel hurt. The audience goes quiet instantly. Hurt, Halle repeats. Yes, Sunny says. They see you as someone who broke a historic barrier. And in moments when they felt afraid or unheard, they looked to you. And when they didn't hear your voice, it felt like absence. The words are softer now, not accusatory, but emotional. Halle absorbs that. She doesn't respond immediately. That wasn't my intention, she says finally. I know, Sunny replies. But impact and intention aren't always the same. The audience murmurs again. Halle nods slowly. That's true. One of the co-hosts speaks up carefully. I think what's powerful here is that we're watching two accomplished women disagree without disrespect. The audience claps. Halle looks at Sunny. Do you think I've been absent? Sunny hesitates, just a second. I think you've been selective. And you think that's wrong. I think it can feel disappointing, Sunny says. Halle's eyes narrow slightly again. Disappointing to who? To women who thought you would be front and center in certain fights. Halle exhales slowly. And what about the fights I've had privately? Sunny doesn't dismiss that. They matter, but they're invisible. Halle's voice becomes more emotional now, not loud but layered. Sometimes invisible work is the only work that gets done without being sabotaged. The audience reacts strongly to that. Sunny responds carefully. But invisible work doesn't always inspire collective action. Halle's tone sharpens slightly. So I'm responsible for inspiration now too? The moderator quickly steps in. Okay, let's not make this about one person carrying everything. But the tension is back, not explosive, but tight. Sunny keeps her composure. No one is saying you carry everything, but you carry influence. And influence doesn't belong to the public, Halle replies. There's an audible wow from somewhere in the audience. Sunny raises an eyebrow. When you step into fame, it does. Halle immediately responds. Fame is not consent to ownership. The audience erupts, applause mixed with surprised reactions. Sunny sits back slightly, taking that in. I'm not claiming ownership, Sunny says calmly. I'm talking about shared responsibility. Halle shakes her head lightly. Responsibility should be chosen, not demanded. The moderator looks toward the producers off camera again. The segment is running long, but no one wants to cut it. One of the co-hosts asks softly, Halle, after hearing Sunny's perspective, do you feel any shift? Halle pauses. I feel challenged. And is that a bad thing? Sunny asks. Not necessarily, Halle admits. Sunny nods. Because my intention isn't to attack you. It's to question how we all use our platforms. Halle looks at her carefully. It didn't feel like a question earlier. The audience murmurs again. Sunny holds her gaze. Then I apologize if it felt accusatory. That moment softens the table noticeably. Halle nods once. Thank you. There's a breath in the room, collective, subtle. But, Sunny adds gently, I still believe public voices matter deeply. Halle responds, and I still believe private work matters just as deeply. Neither backs down. The moderator smiles slightly. And that's why this table exists. The audience applauds again, this time less reactive, more appreciative. But even as the applause continues, the energy isn't fully resolved. There's understanding. There's respect. But there's still tension sitting quietly between them. And everyone watching knows this conversation has moved beyond a simple disagreement. It's now about what leadership means in real time, and whether two powerful women can redefine it without tearing each other down. The moderator takes a breath and looks directly into the camera. This has been a powerful conversation, and I want to spend these last few minutes talking about what happens after moments like this. The audience is quieter now, attentive, reflective. Halle sits with her hands clasped together, composed but visibly thoughtful. Sunny sits across from her, posture straight, expression serious but no longer sharp. One of the co-hosts speaks gently. Halle, when you walk off this stage today, what do you hope people take from this? Halle doesn't rush her answer. I hope they understand that activism doesn't look one way, she says. I hope they understand that public figures are human beings. And I hope young women don't feel like they have to destroy themselves trying to meet everyone's expectations. The audience applauds warmly. Sunny nods slowly. And I hope people understand that asking hard questions isn't an attack. It's part of growth. There's a small ripple in the crowd, some applause, some thoughtful murmurs. The moderator turns to Sunny. Do you feel like this conversation went where you wanted it to go? Sunny pauses. I didn't come in wanting conflict. I came in wanting clarity. She glances at Halle. And I think we got some. Halle gives a small nod. We did. But the tension hasn't completely disappeared. It's just evolved, less sharp, more reflective. One of the co-hosts jumps in. Social media is going to have a field day with this. The audience laughs lightly, breaking the heaviness. Sunny smiles faintly. That's inevitable. Halle adds, clips will be taken out of context. The moderator responds quickly. That's why full conversations matter. Applause. The host continues. We've already been told that reactions are coming in online. A producer off camera hands the moderator a tablet. She scans it briefly. Okay, so within the last 10 minutes, hashtags with both of your names are trending. The audience reacts audibly. Some viewers are praising Halle for defending private advocacy, the moderator reads. Others are applauding Sunny for holding influential figures accountable. Sunny exhales softly. That sounds about right. Halle gives a half smile. That's the world we live in. One of the co-hosts adds, there are also comments saying this is the kind of debate people wish they saw more often. Disagreement without screaming. The audience claps enthusiastically at that. Sunny looks at Halle directly. For what it's worth, I respect you. Halle holds her gaze. I respect you too, even when I don't agree with you. The audience reacts with a warm wave of applause. But then the moderator asks one final question. Halle, after hearing everything today, the expectations, the disappointment some feel, does anything change for you? There's a long pause. Halle chooses her words carefully. I won't change who I am to satisfy noise, she says slowly. But I will reflect on impact. That's fair. Sunny nods once. That's all anyone can ask. The conversation feels like it's winding down, not resolved, but matured. The moderator turns to the audience. This is why conversations matter. They're uncomfortable sometimes. They're layered. But they move us. Applause fills the studio. As the segment officially wraps, the hosts thank Halle for being there. The music begins to rise softly in the background. But even as the show transitions to the next topic, the camera catches something subtle. Halle and Sunny leaning slightly toward each other, speaking quietly off mic. No hostility. No dramatic gestures. Just two women finishing a conversation privately. And that image lingers. After the show ends, the fallout begins almost immediately. Clips circulate online within minutes. Short snippets of Sunny saying, silence can feel like complicity. A tight shot of Halle responding, fame is not consent to ownership. Another clip of Halle admitting, yes, there are moments I wish I had been braver. On social media, reactions split down the middle. Some users praise Halle Berry for defending the idea that advocacy doesn't have to be performative. They call her measured, thoughtful, authentic. Others rally behind Sunny Hostin, saying she asked the questions many viewers were thinking. They argue that influence carries responsibility and that public silence during critical moments has real consequences. Entertainment outlets pick up the story before the afternoon is over. Headlines describe it as tense, honest, unfiltered. Some commentators say it was uncomfortable. Others say it was necessary. Later that evening, both women address the conversation separately. Halle posts a brief message online. She thanks the hosts for the dialogue and reiterates that activism can take many forms, some visible, some not. She writes that growth requires listening. Sunny also posts, clarifying that her intention was never to diminish Halle's contributions, but to explore the complexity of public leadership. The tone from both sides is calm. No shade. No escalation. Behind the scenes, sources say the conversation backstage remained professional. There was no shouting, no dramatic walkouts. Just continued discussion, quieter, more personal, away from the cameras. Producers reportedly acknowledged that while the moment was tense, it was also one of the most engaged segments of the season. Ratings spike. Online engagement surges. But beyond the metrics, something else lingers. The idea that leadership doesn't have one template. The idea that accountability and empathy can clash and still coexist. The next morning, talk radio debates replay the exchange. Panelists argue about whether public figures owe constant commentary or whether private impact is enough. Viewers dissect facial expressions, pauses, tone shifts. Was Sunny too direct? Was Halle too defensive? Or was this simply two intelligent women navigating a complicated topic in real time? Back at the table the following week, the hosts briefly reference the moment. They emphasize that open dialogue is part of the show's identity. And the audience applauds. Because whether people agreed or disagreed, they felt something real. No scripted meltdown. No manufactured drama. Just tension. Just honesty. Just two different philosophies colliding on live television. And that's what made it resonate. So now we turn it to you. Was Sunny right to press for more visible advocacy? Was Halle right to defend private impact? Can public figures ever fully meet the expectations placed on them? Or is the real lesson that leadership comes in more than one form? Share your opinion in the comments and subscribe to the Star Talks for more real talk show stories.